Just a quick legal disclaimer, I did receive this case and the rails as a review sample with the only expectation that I do a video on it. So one issue you might run into is partially my fault, and Sliger doesn't recommend you take these rails fully apart. So obviously you have to remove the slide that attaches the case, but the inner slide you want to leave with the rail. It's not because it damages anything, it's just because it causes unnecessary headache if you reassemble it wrong. And what you have to be mindful of is this little tab here prevents you from pulling the rails all the way out the front, and it lines up with this spot here basically on the rail. And with these slides, that tab on the right side goes up, and then on the left side it goes the other way around, so basically it points down. And these install through the back of the outer slide, not the front. And if you try to install it from the front, you'll be forced to install it the wrong way around, because there's not enough clearance for that tab to get in unless you force it in. So if you install this inner slide from the front, you have to do it backwards, and then you have to get past this. Well, there we go. Now it's not going to go in all the way properly. Also, it's going to be possible for you to pull it all the way out. And I don't even know how this will work. Yeah, see, you can't even get the case slide through properly. So you want to be mindful of which way though this inner slide goes in, which is through the back, and you can't install it backwards through the back. Oops. Oh, well, I installed the right way. You can't install it backwards through the back because that little tab will interfere. Oops, my arm's in the way. That little tab will interfere and won't go in correctly. So there's only one way this will go in, through the back. And then when you put it in, you'll hit that locking pin. You have to push it in. Hard to do without blocking the camera. There we go. And then slide it past. And basically what you want to look for is you want to see that tab line up with that spot right there, right above the locking pin. And that means that's been installed correctly. And with these rails that attach to the part of the rails attached to the case, this little springy bit here needs to be facing towards the back of the case and the back of the rack. And this bit feeds in from the front. When you do get it in, which I'm not going to be able to show, I'm going to slide this thing correct. Alright, oops, hitting stuff. Also, if you do get in a bind and you can't get the rail in, you can gently pry up on this and then slide the rail past like that. But with this, with the spring pin towards the back, you'll slide it in until it hits, and then you'll push it in, and then you push the rail in the rest of the way. If you install it backwards, well, you're gonna hit on that and potentially damage it. You could push it in, but it's gonna cause other issues. It doesn't want to go all the way in and latch properly. Oops. Also, with this mount, this little tab here is what interacts with this locking pin. So if you don't have this installed the right way, you'll be able to get the slide that attaches to the case all the way in, where you're not going to push this in without manually engaging that, which isn't really recommended. So just something to keep in mind, that the springy latching mechanism goes towards the back of the case, as so, and then you should be good to go. Should push it in and all going correctly. So when installing your case, you want to make sure you have the inner slides fully extended and locked into place. And then from there, you'll take the slides that mount to your case, you'll line them up with those inner slides and stab them into the gaps. And then once you get it in far enough where it hits that locking tab, you want to reach under and kind of push in on it while you push in on the case. And then once you push it in far enough where you hear that click, you're safe. Your case won't be able to go out too far and fall down. And in theory, everything should be lined up correctly. And just to test to see if it's lined up correctly, just push it in and then slide it all the way in and feel for fitment. When you want to push your case into the rack, one thing I found is these locking pins have a really strong spring and they can be kind of tricky to deal with. And the trick, just to make it easier, that I found is you want to push the case back so the pin's engaged on the back side of the opening. And what I will tend to do is with my thumb, I'll push down the pin and then I'll just kind of gently push that side of the case in. So not too far, because you don't want to twist it to the point where everything gets in a bind or you bend your rails. But I will do that with both sides. And then once you get both sides past that point, you can push the whole front of the case in, and then make sure it's even, of course. And that's what I've found to be the easiest trick to getting those latches released. So if you have issues where your case doesn't want to slide in very well and it feels like it's in a bind, it could just be with the way the rails are. They are kind of stiff since they're friction fit and not sitting on bearings. But the other possibility is the alignment of everything's not quite right. And what you can do is just loosen your screws ever so slightly, like maybe a quarter to a half turn. And I would only start with like one side or the other. So I'm going to start with the front side. And you can kind of wiggle the case around and just feel for alignment, see if it feels like it's seated better. And then once you're happy with how it slides in and out, be sure to snug down those screws. Now, due to the tight tolerances, don't let your screwdriver come out at an angle like that, because you'll strip out the heads of the screws. So what I'm doing, as you can see here, is I have the tip of the screwdriver obviously in the screw head, and I'm kind of using the back of the screwdriver to supply pressure so the screwdriver can't slip out, and then just tightening it up. Like that. And then once you tighten both sides, do another test run of sliding in and out. Also, when you do tighten those screws, you want to make sure the alignment washers are nice and aligned with the holes in the rack, but with each other. These are slightly off-centered from each other, but that's not too far off, so it should be fine. So one issue people might run into with their rails not going in correctly is due to the dross that's left over from the laser cutting process on the edges of the rails. Mine are actually pretty clean for the most part. I will put up a picture that Sliger supplied of what you might run into though. And basically what they've recommended with that is use a soft mallet, like a rubber mallet, and preferably one that's not as bad a shape as mine, but you can hit the residue and knock it off. I would recommend against using anything harder than like rubber or plastic, because if you hit these hard enough, you could deform them and then make it harder to use the rails, if not, make them completely unusable. So a less common scenario you might run into is the locking pins got depressed in the wrong order, and it'll cause it so your case won't go in all the way. And what you need to do is just pull the case all the way out again till these back latches pop into place. And when you push the case in, you got to make sure these front latches for the inner rails are the ones you push in. Yeah, it can be kind of tricky, but once you get it started, if you push in slowly, the inner rails will engage with these locking pins and push them out of the way like that, and then your case should go in all the way and sit flush. So one oddity you'll run into with the 14-inch rails is it has a slightly different design than the longer General Devices rails, and the tab or latch for the inner part of the rail is angled differently. Sliger said they don't really know why, but that's just how they are when they get them. And the installation is still the same though. The tab will go to the back of the chassis, and if everything's installed correctly, it won't cause any issues. It's just a different design. And the picture I'm showing is one that was supplied by Sliger, since I don't have the 14-inch rail set. So with these rails, they're primarily designed to be used with your square hole post style of server rack, and they're not really meant to be mounted in the threaded hole or round hole racks. There is ways you can make it work, but there's not really an official solution yet on how to use these General Devices rails in other styles of racks. It is something Sliger's working on figuring out though, but in the meantime, if you don't have a square hole rack, you might want to figure out a different solution to mounting your chassis. So hopefully that was helpful. Sliger support was kind enough to send me a list of some of the most common issues they run into. If there's another issue you run into that you don't see in this video, feel free to let me know, although I can't guarantee I'll be able to solve it if I can't replicate it. But either way, hopefully that was helpful, and thanks for watching.